Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. 2023 has not been a good year for Hollywood. In fact, it was a horrible year. But if you go and read articles that were recently released by Variety and The Hollywood Reporter, both of these articles focus more on the writers' and actors' strikes that occurred earlier this year, the pandemic, and comparisons with other years that are far in Hollywood's past to glossily assess just how bad 2023 has been. But what neither article truly wants to address is the actual crux of the matter, which is this year's pathetic box office earnings. While both articles mention a handful of movies and might even mention their individual box office earnings, neither goes into any depth about just how bad Hollywood's 2023 box office has been, because numbers, especially when compared with 2022's numbers, speak volumes about the current state that Hollywood's movie-making business is in. And before we dive into those numbers, I'd like to ask everyone to please like this video, please press the red subscribe button to support this channel, and please press the bell to receive notifications. Thanks! This year, Hollywood released 52 movies that had production budgets that were at least $20 million. And of those 52 movies, by my calculations, 33 of them flopped, which was 63.5%, or nearly 2/3. Additionally, of those 52 movies, only 13 did actually manage to break even, which was 25%. And of the remaining 6 movies, 5 are in what I define as a gray area, and there is one abstention due to the fact that it had just opened in theaters on Christmas Day, so it doesn't have enough data to do any analysis with it yet. The 5 movies that are in the gray area are those whose final global gross box office earnings are within plus or minus $15 million of their estimated break-even point ranges, which makes it very difficult to precisely know whether or not they actually broke even or flopped. And one of those 5 is Disney Pixar's animated movie Elemental, which I have spoken about multiple times in my Who Will Be the Biggest Flop video series. Now, how I determine whether a particular movie has broken even or not depends on its estimated break-even point, which I typically calculate by multiplying its production budget by 2.5, or by both 2.5 and 3.0, to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, as well as the additional costs of marketing the movie and other miscellaneous costs that the studio pays above and beyond the production budget. In the rare cases where a movie's marketing budget has been publicized, then its estimated break-even point is determined by adding that figure with the movie's production budget and then multiplying the sum of those two values by 2. To compare 2023's overall box office with that of 2022, I applied the same criteria to its movies, and what I ended up with was 49 movies that had production budgets that were at least $20 million. And of those 49 2020 movies, 19 had clearly flopped, which was only 38.8% of the total, 17 broke even, which was 34.7% of the total, and there were 5 abstentions and 8 in the gray area, which represented 10.2% and 16.3% of the total respectively. In this case, the 5 abstentions are movies that had not been fully released in theaters due to the pandemic. And this next chart has the 2 sets of counts side by side to make it easier to see the large differences between 2022 and 2023. Around 14 more movies flopped this year than in 2022, and around 4 fewer movies managed to break even than in 2022. So that clearly doesn't paint a good picture for Hollywood's 2023 box office, and neither Variety nor The Hollywood Reporter bother to report this when it is highly relevant. So now let's add up all of the production budgets, domestic opening weekend box office earnings, the final domestic box office earnings, and the final global gross box office earnings for all of 2023's and 2022's movies. And when we do that, we get this next chart. For the 6 movies that are in an abstention state, only their production budgets are included because they don't contain the other relevant sets of data. Thus, the total production budgets for 2022 and 2023 are for 49 and 52 movies respectively, while the other 3 sets of data are based on 44 movies from 2022, and 51 movies from 2023. One of the most interesting things in this chart is that the total amount of money spent to produce the 52 movies this year is more than $1 billion more than what was spent for the 50 movies that were produced last year. And that $1 billion is way more than just what inflation would have accounted for. A lot of that is the exorbitant amount of money that multiple Hollywood studios spent to produce expensive blockbuster movies in 2023 that mostly flopped in theaters this year. For the other sets of data, they are very similar to each other, and in fact, the total global gross box office revenue for both 2022 and 2023 are nearly identical. But for 2022, that's for 6 fewer movies than for 2023. Which means that the average dollar amount earned by each 2022 movie is greater than the average dollar amount earned by each 2023 movie. And when we combine that information with the much greater amount of money spent to produce 2023's movies, this is starting to explain why so many more movies flopped in 2023 as compared with 2022. And we'll get more information by looking at those averages as illustrated in this next chart. For the production budgets, the amount of money that studios spent to produce 2023's 52 movies is around $118.9 million each, while the same studio spent around $101.2 million each to produce 2022's 49 movies. That's a difference of $17.8 million being spent more per movie in 2023 than in 2022. And that's greater than the rate of inflation because every movie in 2023 cost around 17.6% more to produce on average than the 2022 movies did. Thus, Hollywood studios spent a lot more than they should have for this year's slate of mostly lackluster flopped movies, and had they spent less money to produce each movie, then there probably wouldn't have been as many flops this year. So now let's take a look at the average earnings figures. And in all 3 cases, the average earnings for 2022 were higher than those for 2023. Thus, a lot fewer people were interested in seeing Hollywood's slate of 2023 movies, but Hollywood studios spent on average 17.6% more to produce each of those movies. The average domestic opening weekend box office for 2022 is more than $4 million higher than the similar 2023 average. The average final domestic box office earnings for 2022 is around $22.8 million higher than it is for the 2023 average, and the average final global gross box office earnings for each 2022 movie is around $45.2 million higher than the 2023 average. And that $45.2 million difference accounts for just over $2 billion of the total revenue earned by those 44 2022 movies, which is a heck of a lot of money, isn't it? So yes, 2022 was a significantly better year for Hollywood overall than 2023 has been. And part of the reason for that can be shown in a further breakdown of how much Hollywood studios spent on producing movies that were flops as compared with how much money was spent on films that broke even. This next chart illustrates that additional breakdown of total money spent in 2022 and 2023 to produce their respective movies. In 2022, of the films that flopped, only around $1.75 billion had been spent to produce them, as compared with the $2.32 billion that had been spent on movies that broke even. But in 2023, because many more movies flopped, Hollywood spent $4.4 billion on those movies, which is $2 billion more than what Hollywood had spent on the 2022 movies that had broken even. That $4.4 billion is also nearly 3 times more than what Hollywood spent on the movies that actually broke even in 2023. In other words, Hollywood has been investing far more money on flops in 2023 than it has on successful movies. And many of the movies that flopped this year were filled with woke identity politics messaging, such as The Marvels, Blue Beetle, Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction, and The Little Mermaid. Now, if I break down these totals into the average production budget spent on the movies that either flopped or broke even, we get another very interesting chart. How Hollywood spent money on average for movies that either flopped or broke even are essentially mirror images of each other between 2022 and 2023. In 2022, Hollywood spent more money on average on movies that broke even than for movies that flopped. But in 2023, it's the exact opposite, with Hollywood spending more money on average on movies that flopped than broke even. This is a direct result of Hollywood producing entertainment that people are not interested in watching, which is why so many movies flopped in 2023. And where have audiences, both domestic and international, been spending their money? Well, back in 2022, audiences spent $11.38 billion in global gross box office tickets to watch the movies that broke even that year, and that was 78.3% of the total revenue earned by the 44 movies that had theatrical runs and had production budgets of at least $20 million. But audiences only spent $2.12 billion on seeing the flops in 2022, which was only 14.6% of that year's global gross box office revenue. Then take a look at 2023, whose total global gross box office revenue was nearly exactly the same for its 51 movies that had at least $20 billion production budgets. But the money earned by the 2023 movies that broke even was $3.73 billion less than 2022 for a total of only $7.65 billion and was only 52.6% of 2023's total revenue. And the money earned by the movies that ultimately flopped this year was $3.63 billion higher than those that flopped in 2022 at $5.75 billion, which was 39.5% of the total revenue earned in 2023. Interestingly, the highest grossing movie of 2023, the hit comedic fantasy Barbie, earned less than 2022's second highest grossing movie, which was Tom Cruise's Top Gun: Maverick. And of course, the highest grossing movie of 2022 was James Cameron's Avatar: The Way of Water, which grossed nearly $2.32 billion, and no movies in 2023 grossed over $2 billion. So in fact, 2022 had 3 movies that topped $1 billion globally: Avatar: The Way of Water, Top Gun: Maverick, and Jurassic World: Dominion. It also had 2 movies that surpassed $900 million globally: Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and Minions: The Rise of Gru. In comparison, 2023 only had 2 movies that topped $1 billion globally: Barbie and the Super Mario Bros. Movie. And it also only had 1 movie that topped $900 million globally, which was the biopic Oppenheimer. After that, each year only had 1 movie that topped $800 million, which were 2022's Black Panther: Wakanda Forever and 2023's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which was also the only live-action superhero movie released in 2023 that actually broke even. The other 6 live-action superhero movies that were released in 2023 all flopped. Hollywood needed to earn several billion dollars more overall this year to even be close to the near 50-50 split that 2022's movies had between those that broke even and those that flopped. And I seriously doubt that the writers or actor strikes had much to do with the vast majority of the 2023 movies that flopped, because those movies had already been produced. Sure, the actors weren't available once their strike began to promote movies, but appearances by Xolo Maridueña wouldn't have helped Blue Beetle, for example. That movie was going to be a box office disaster as soon as Warner Brothers and DC Studios had greenlit it, because hardly anyone was familiar with the D-list superhero character. That movie was produced solely to check off on woke identity politics checkmarks, nothing more. But now I'll quickly cite the 2023 movies that flopped in theaters. In the roughly $15 million to $40 million range of studio losses were the following 6 movies in ascending order. In 33rd position is 84 Brady, in 32nd place is The Machine, in 31st place is No Hard Feelings, in 30th place is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, in 29th place is Dumb Money, and in 28th place is 65. In the roughly $40 million to $60 million range of losses were the next 6 movies. In 27th place is Big George Foreman. In 26th place is Trolls Band Together. In 25th place is Beau is Afraid. In 24th place is Strays. In 23rd place is The Last Voyage of the Demeter. In 22nd place is Operation Fortune Ruse de Guerre. In the roughly $60 million to $80 million range of losses are the next 5 movies. In 21st place is Fast X. In 20th place is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which is number 6 in terms of superhero movies that lost money. In 19th place is The Creator. In 18th place is Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. And in 17th place is Ruby Gillman: Teenage Kraken. Between roughly the $80 million to $100 million range of studio losses is only one movie in 16th place, Knights of the Zodiac. And from this point forward, you'll see a lot of familiar titles because their losses are all over $100 million, and we'll begin with the 6 movies whose losses were between roughly $100 million to $125 million. In 15th place is The Little Mermaid. In 14th place is Blue Beetle, which is number 5 in terms of superhero movies that lost money in 2023. In 13th place is Renfield. In 12th place is Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. In 11th place is Shazam! Fury of the Gods, which is number 4 in terms of superhero movies that lost money. And in 10th place is Expendables. And now we're at the movies that I am currently featuring in my Who Will Be the Biggest Flop video series, and whose losses range from just under $145 million to over $300 million. In 9th place is Napoleon. In 8th place is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. In 7th place is Wish. In 6th place is Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, which is currently number 3 in terms of superhero movies that lost money. In 5th place is Killers of the Flower Moon. In 4th place is Haunted Mansion. In 3rd place is Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction. In 2nd place is The Marvels. And in 1st place is The Flash. And the main reason that The Flash is number 1 is because of its very pricey production budget of $300 million, which was revealed back in August, as I had talked about in a video that I had released at the time, as well as its lackluster box office. Potentially, The Marvels may be the biggest flop, but all of my calculations are based on the data that's currently available. But yes, 2023 was an incredibly bad year for Hollywood and for Disney in particular, and only time will tell whether 2024 ends up being a better year for the studios. I don't know, but I do know that there won't be any new DC movies released in 2024, and there will only be one MCU movie, which will be Deadpool 3. There will be some additional non-MCU Marvel movies released by Sony, and I don't know how those will perform yet, but I will no doubt be talking about them in upcoming videos sometime in the near future. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, and please feel free to share a comment. If you'd like to help support this channel, please press the red subscribe button, and please press the bell to receive notifications for new content. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.